really starts way back when. And I have to tell the story of Pelzer to really tell you the story of West Pelzer. And so a guy by the name of John Wilson, who was a state house rep and went on to be a congressman, ran Wilson's Ferry across the Saluda River way before the dam was constructed. He served as a member of the state house. As I said, he was in Congress. He lost his re-election, died 2 years later. He's buried in Pelzer. And he was really kind of the godfather, if you will, of the area. He's what put Pelzer on the map. And so in 1880, a guy by the name of Captain Smythe, Francis Pelzer, and William Levy came to town from Charleston. And to be completely honest, they came there to make money. They came there to be innovative. They came there to make a difference and to build cotton mills. They created what I like to call, Williamston is coined as the Saratoga of the South. This was definitely the most innovative place in the world. It was the Silicon Valley of South Carolina at the time. But it was that way, frankly, because of child labor. And children worked. That's why Joe Jackson is in this picture. He worked in that mill at 6 years old before he left and went to West Greenville, which is why he did not have an education. They wanted them to work. So obviously that all changed in 1938, where you actually couldn't work children anymore. But the interesting thing that happened during all this is that GE was formed at the same time. And so if you go through some of the things that Edison had did or that GE had done, you've got the incandescent light bulb, you've got the locomotive, you've got televisions, all of that was occurring at the same time. And so one of the things that happened is that the first GE turbine ever constructed is still in the lower dam in Pelzer, and it still has Thomas Edison's signature on the side of it because his companies were purchased by GE. Pelzer paid in mill coins. You lived in a mill home. You shopped at the mill store. You didn't have U.S. currency. It just wasn't the greatest place in the world to live from the outside looking in. I have family members that grew up there that loved it. It was one of the great communities. They told you when you were going to take vacation. But if you read a book called The Company Town, you'll learn that this was not only common in textile industry, it was also common up in the Northeast with iron. It was common on the West Coast with gold. And so for the mills, they moved everyone from Appalachia down and said, we'll give you an education, we'll give your kids a better life, we'll give you a place to live. John Franks was just a measly old surveyor for Pelzer Manufacturing. He surveyed out the corner of the mills, the parking lots if they needed them, where the dam was going to go. He was just a good old-fashioned surveyor. But he got really, really upset because Captain Smythe and Francis Pelzer and William Levy, they didn't allow certain things because, as I told you, you were paid in mill coins, you shopped in the mill store, you took vacation when they told you to. But they didn't allow three things that really upset John Franks. One of those was having a dog. And so Captain Smythe had his own pet, but wouldn't allow anyone else to have a pet. He didn't allow you to gamble because you couldn't gamble with money that you didn't have. So you could gamble your mill tokens away, but then you couldn't shop in the mill store and then you wouldn't come to work. So he didn't allow gambling at all. And the other thing he didn't allow was alcohol. Because if you drank, then there's no way that you would come to work the next morning. And you couldn't work, then you couldn't make any money. And so he wanted you to stay there. And so the town of Frankville was established Christmas Eve 1913 by the alderman. The Secretary of State came up, they signed the papers, and we were founded on three core principles of I will allow you to drink, I will pay you in U.S. currency and allow you to gamble, and by God, if you want a pet, then move on over to Frankville and we will allow you to have it. So for 5 years, we were named Frankville. I don't know what happened during those 5 years. There's nothing in history that tells me what happened. We don't have a log in town of this is who came in and built a home. We know that there are a couple of older homes in the area that were built in 1898 and 1893. Those are the two oldest homes. 1893 is the home that sits at 62 Main Street. And then the mortuary building, or the home at 61 Main, was built shortly thereafter. And so we have a break in history where we really don't know what happened. The next kind of series of history that we've been told, or that we have documentation for, was September the 13th, 1918. The people got together and said, we need to change our name. We do not know why they wanted to change their name. If John Franks was crazy, If he became an alcoholic and gambled all his money away, we don't know. We know that Captain Smythe moved. We know that Captain Smythe moved to what is now the Sandberg home in Flat Rock. So we know that was his home from Pelzer when he left. So we have no idea. But September the 13th, 1918, the community got together, they did a referendum, and they changed their name to West Pelzer. And that's what we have been for a little over 100 years. And so we have some old photos of what used to be there. We've got the drugstore, which Arthur Davis is in this. This is sometime around, the picture says, the turn of the century. Well, we know it wasn't around the turn of the century. It says West Pelzer Drugs on it. So we know it was after, sometime around 1918. But if you read this, this was a variety of businesses. It was a barber shop, it was a used car lot, a blacksmith shop, a grocery store, and a cleaner. I don't know how you jam all of that into one place, but somehow in West Pelzer we found out how to do so, and then there's an image of it on the right. This building, it sits in a parking lot across from Milltown Place. So that parking lot is where this building stood. Boots and Thelma's was the restaurant that everyone will tell you, oh, West Pelzer, that's where Boots and Thelma's is at. And so it was run by Boots and Thelma. And Thelma used to stand at the corner in the at the red light, or which was a flashing signal at the time, in a bathing suit and wave people from the stoplight to come up and eat. So in 2017, we relocated Town Hall that was originally built in 1955. It is now our Odell Community Center. It is a 40 by 40 block building, and 40 by 40 is probably being very generous. It was built for $8,000. It was one room. So that's where the chief of police office was, the court clerk, the town clerk, the mayor's office, the jail, everything was in one. And maybe that was something that West Pelzer did well. We put every business into one building. And so in 2017, the town of West Pelzer did a general obligation bond and purchased the old Napa Auto parts store. And so when we purchased that, we asked the new owner, said, hey, that Boots and Thelma sign that you were just going to tear down up there before you make it Milltown Place, do you think we could have it? So there I skimmy up the ladder to cut this sign off. And so it's now in our break room in Town Hall. And so it's also part of our public space. So if you want to come and check out West Pelzer Town Hall and read our original incorporation documents from 1913 and from 1918, you can drink a cup of coffee under the Boots sign. The chair on the far right, sometimes it moves up and down. And the rumor is that Mayor Johnny Gaines, who was mayor, as the longest serving mayor in West Pelzer, he served for 25 years before he died in office, and on his deathbed he said, nobody can do this job as good as I can. The rumor is that he haunts that far right chair, and so occasionally it's up, occasionally it's down, but nobody ever sits in it. I can promise you that. We've got some great photos of the churches being built in town, but West Pelzer Baptist Church, as it was constructed, is still in its current state. It's had a couple of additions, and it was built in the 50s. And so then the Anderson mayors got involved in this little old town of West Pelzer. And so all the municipalities got together with the municipalities in Oconee County and Pickens County and formed the first municipal association. So we've been working together with our neighbors for a very long time. West Pelzer was also the first to show you that every vote matters in every election. And so we have had 2 elections since 1918 that we have record of that were decided by 1 vote. Mayor Durham, back in the day, used to raise money to then give televisions to those that were less fortunate, which was a big deal, I guess, when televisions cost a lot of money. And then we had the first photographic studio in Anderson County with Snipes Studio. And so this is the only photo that we have documentation of that came from it. Some of the old-timers have told us that it was open well before 1914, that it was just a place where everyone in the mill come and took their photograph as well. We actually do not know where it was located at, but we know that we've got Snipes on it, and Snipes had the drugstore that was across the street. So we know that there's some history there, at least with photography. There are over 100 species of birds in West Pelzer. Our very first ordinance ever passed by the aldermen of the town of West Pelzer stated, "It shall be unlawful for any person to trap, hunt, shoot, or attempt to shoot or molest in any manner any bird or wild fowl, or to rob bird's nest or wild fowl nest." That ordinance went on to be amended to include that you could not cut down a tree in West Pelzer because it was bird habitat. Also think about Mr. Timmerman was born and raised on Main Street in West Pelzer. He was the first director of the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. And then kind of more closer to home, I think about Dolly Cooper. If you remember stories of West Pelzer, there was Cooper Furniture Store that was run by the Cooper family, Dolly's family. The Veterans Cemetery is named after him. But in a 1974 interview, Representative Cooper said he preferred small town life where I know everybody and everybody knows me. When the 4 mills in Pelzer were torn down, the bricks palleted up, shipped to China, jobs dispersed throughout the county, this is what we were left with. And so all of our businesses left when the mills closed down because the jobs left, the housing left. We hadn't built a new home in West Pelzer since 1965. Like, we were just a stagnant community. And so we had to start thinking about history for us in a different way. West Pelzer, while strategically located directly adjacent to Pelzer, is a mere 25 minutes from downtown Anderson, downtown Clemson, downtown Easley, downtown Greenville, downtown Fountain Inn, downtown Simpsonville, and the proposed downtown Malden. We started saying, well, we're where you want to live. We're the central part of all of this. You want to drive to Columbia? It's an hour and 42 minutes. I drove it the other day. You want to drive to Atlanta? It's 107 miles. If you get stuck in traffic, it's going to feel like 207 miles. So we started telling that story, and people started recognizing that, oh, I've actually been through West Pelzer. Of course you've been through West Pelzer. It's the connector between 85 and 385. We were the southern connector before it was cool. We have a trade area population of 60,000 people, which is different than our actual population now of about 1,100. But the trade area means people don't see boundaries. And so for you to say, I don't know where West Pelzer's at, well, that's okay, because I didn't know when I entered the city of Anderson when I was driving here. I don't know when I'm entering the city of Greenville. And it's okay if you don't know when you're entering the town of West Pelzer, because our trade area population is greater in population than the city of Greenville. And so we received a hometown economic development grant, and we were part of Riley Mayer's Design Institute, where we got to just dive in and start thinking and talking about what the story is. And so we started developing just little things. We started something called Expand Your Wings, which was a historic walking tour that started from our core. And so you can grab this book and you can go through and you can say, okay, the Odell Community Center, that used to be Town Hall. And what marks each one is we partnered with the elementary school to build birdhouses and then paint them. And then we pass them out to all the property owners. So there's a picture of the birdhouse as well as what you're looking at, so you know you're looking at the right place. We didn't have a town flag, which seemed kind of odd that if we were going to be this innovative place, that we were going to have something that we could fly proudly Frank. And so we went through a design process with council to develop this flag, which hangs in front of our town hall. And you may be saying, well, what does this even mean? And so there's a really good TED Talk that talks about flags, and it talks about how they should be easily readable, no matter how big, which is why I bring the small version, not the big one. And then it should tell a story really, really fast. And then it should be replicated by children easily. So we took council through a process to design this flag. And so the orange on the top is representative of the sun setting in the west. The white line down the middle is representative of Highway 8, or Main Street, that bisects West Pelzer. It also serves that we were the interstate before the interstate. We were the connectors between Fountain Inn and the Clemson area. And then the blue is the Saluda River, because we were founded upon the principles of the mill and how they harnessed energy to then send over the lines. And then there are 3 birds on it. One, we're a bird sanctuary. When I'm talking to the children at school, I will say that is faith, family, and friendships. When I'm talking to adult groups, I will tell you that is gambling, dogs, and alcohol. That's what those 3 represent. But that's what council voted on unanimously, might I add, Mayor Pro Tem. And that is what flies in front of our town hall. We started Chapman Park, and so Chapman Park sits where Chapman Grocery used to be. And so the Chapman family donated that property to the town because their grocery store had closed, obviously, and the building was falling in. And so The town didn't know if they should condemn it or what they should do, and so the Chapman family said, I tell you what, we'll just give it to you, and you figure out what to do with it. So they gave it to the town, and we built a park and named it after them. And so Chapman Park is our only green space in West Pelzer. But something crazy happened after mayor and council at the time built this park and honored the Chapman family, and people started talking about the history again. And so we opened up the West Pelzer Municipal Center. Should have been $1 million project. We did it for $187,000. That meant that we painted our own walls and hung our own doors in there, but we made it work. But what we witnessed after that was that the other stores started coming after that. And so Dolly's Old Furniture Store became an antique shop. And then Boots and Thelma's opened back up under new ownership called Milltown Place. But Milltown Place started to have a wait. We had the food truck, and then on Fridays, you couldn't get in to eat anywhere. They opened up an ice cream shop. West Pelzer was becoming rejuvenated, and it was nothing that the mayor did. It was nothing that council did. It was the people got excited again. Some of the older population started getting back out, and they started saying, I remember what this felt like 50 years ago. We did get a really cool place called Baby Sumo, and I encourage you to come eat there. It's hibachi Japanese food. It's amazing. And then 24 West Salon and Boutique. I was the first as mayor to say, another salon? You've got to be kidding me. This place is rocking and rolling, not only with hair, but with nails, and now the boutique side, so people are going in and out of it all day long. It is an amazing anchor in a small town to have those folks there, and we are super blessed to do so. But we finally did get something that we were stretching for, the place to drink a beer at or the place to grab a coffee at. And we really felt like in West Pelzer that if we could make you sit down and have one cold beverage of choice, water, Coke, or a beer or a glass of wine, that we could convince you to stay just a little bit longer. And if I can convince you to stay in town for long enough for me to tell you the story, then you might say, well, I might go back there one day. And so we opened up the Lincoln Tap Room. So Lincoln was the president who made Thanksgiving a federal holiday. At least that's what the history books tell me. And we wanted it to be a place for everyone. It didn't matter your color. It didn't matter your age, other than if you wanted to have a drink. It didn't matter anything about you. We just wanted it to be a place where you could come and you could be a part of a larger family. But the other reason is that under Lincoln's presidency, the Union and the South combined. And so the story goes that one day, probably 100 years from now, Pelzer and West Pelzer will join over a cold beer at the Lincoln Tap Room, similar to the Union and the South. We don't know who's going to be fighting or who's going to start the war between the two towns, but one day we will join. And then Cotton Duck opened up. And so Cotton Duck, I guess, was a term that was used in the mill for how they would duck the cloth. They had a cotton duck. A local pastor owns Cotton Duck, and so he wanted to pull from the textile history as well. We started partnering with our neighbors in Pelzer, and so Mayor Will Ragland, the mayor of Pelzer, runs what's called Milltown Players. If you have not been to see a show there, I highly encourage you to do so, and I highly encourage you to purchase your tickets early and get really good seats. They've been in season now for about 10 years, maybe 8 years. They see about 30,000 people a year from 7 different states. The great thing about not having boundaries, and again, me telling you there's 60,000 people in that 15-mile radius, nobody knows this is in Pelzer unless you tell them. So we tell everybody this is in West Pelzer. You can go see a theater. And then we started talking to the churches, and this is a very selfish thing I did as mayor. I will be honest about it. I had 2 young children at the time when I first became mayor, and we took our children to all the trunk or treats. And it didn't matter if it was the Church of God, the Presbyterian Church, both Baptist Church, we just hauled them from place to place. So I sat them all down and I said, I firmly believe that we're all going to heaven, regardless of if you're Presbyterian or Baptist or Church of God. Surely one night a year we could all get together and have Halloween in one place. Let's do our trunk or treats together. And so we started doing that in 2016 with every church in town and the surrounding area. Again, we don't see boundaries, the 15-minute drive time. And we see about 3,500 kids a year, and we had every church participate with us, which is an amazing thing when we start to, again, tell the story of faith, family, and friendships. This is where the faith definitely comes into play. And this is where we started having people say, we haven't closed the streets down in West Pelzer since 1962. That's the last time I can remember the high school having a sock off. So we started touching a nerve, I guess, with some people, and they started wanting a little bit more. And so we started doing something what's called the mile-long yard sale. We do it every year the first weekend in October. And I texted our town administrator and I said, I think I want to have a yard sale. I'm tired of seeing them all year long. I'm positive council is not going to do a yard sale ordinance to restrict when people could do that, but what if we did it all together? So the first weekend in October is typically when Clemson's homecoming is. We have about 10,000 cars a day on Main Street on any given day. That number goes up to 35,000 on Clemson home games. So we picked homecoming to have our yard sale. There were so many cars the first year. They were backed up. If you're familiar with West Pelzer and where Moonville's at or Ware Place, cars were backed up past Highway 25. People were starting to use the real Southern Connector to bypass West Pelzer because that's how the GPS was taking them. But we had people out walking the streets. And so those estimated 15,000 people that came to West Pelzer that day and got out of their vehicle saw those chicken prints on it. We had 11 phone calls on Monday back at Town Hall saying, hey, what are those chicken prints that are all around? So we, albeit 11, but we got to tell that story to 11 people of, hey, let me send you the PDF of this walking tour that we have so that you can walk around town and you can see what we see. You can see these giant murals that we have on the side of our buildings that, in essence, don't tell any sort of history. They don't tell anything crazy or fun about Frankville or West Pelzer. It's just intended to be something that's fun, something that you can just smile at, that you can take your picture of. And so we had a world-renowned artist by the name of Andy Gambrell, who was from West Pelzer. He taught at the Savannah School of Art and Design in Savannah and Hong Kong and chaired the University of Miami's art department. Lived from West Pelzer, but then moved back. And he said, hey, I'd like to do something now that you have this space in town. Let's have a gallery. Didn't know people in West Pelzer loved art until we started the Grand Gallery. And it's called the Grand Gallery because we're halfway between Greenville, G-R, and Anderson, A-N-D, which is why it's called Grand. We partner with AU, or prior to COVID, we partnered with AU, with Clemson, and with Furman to rotate student artists to come through. And then the artist, as part of our council meetings every other month, would exhibit and then talk about their paintings or their drawings or their sculptures. Just a way to bring art into the community. Because in West Pelzer, we're a little bit crazy. Sometimes we do things like mile-long yard sales, or we try to tell a story about history that maybe stops at 1918 and then we really don't know what happened after that. And so we do crazy things like we want to continue to help, similar to how Mayor Durham gave televisions. Well, we can at least do a food pantry, right? We always support all of our nonprofits, but I posted on the town social media one night that said, hey, we've got 4 hungry people that come to town hall this week that we're just looking for somewhere to go, somewhere to get some food at. And obviously we can point them to AIM or to Interfaith Ministries or to other places. In 6 minutes, we had $600 donated to the town that just wanted to just give money if you'll just continue to put food into a food bank. And then we had someone volunteer to build the food bank for us. It was done in 2 days, and it stays stocked, and it has stayed stocked for 7 years just from people giving money. And it's a place to go, and it's a partnership with one of the churches. So it's not on town property. It's not in the public right-of-way. It's part of the church. We have in August what's called Dog Days of Summer. So that's our last nod to one of our founding principles of dogs. So we have a dog show. And we're the only dog show in Anderson County. We do it every year, and we pick the hottest day of July to do it on. So the first year we did it, we had 52 dogs from as far away as Chesney come to be in our huge dog show. And then on Mother's Day and Father's Day, to a mother and father of the year, we gave out rocking chairs because we started to tell a story of we want to be a front porch community again. Not only are we the front porch, in our opinion, to Anderson County or to the Saluda River or to Clemson University, we're the front porch to the mountains and to kind of the greater cause. And then one of the most fun things that we do is we do an adult Easter egg hunt. And we love that children get to do Easter egg hunts. But every year, the week before Easter, we have a scavenger hunt. And every morning on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we post a clue of where a gigantic egg is hidden at in town. And the clue might send you someplace else to where you've got to figure out where else to go. And then you bring the egg back to town hall and we give an adult prize. And that adult prize is typically a Cityscape winery or a fishing rod or something like that. But it's always fun that we get to nod our hat to our history of gambling, dogs, and alcohol through some crazy Easter egg hunt. But again, just another way that we get to tell the story. On the left, 1880s, it was a grocery store in Pelzer. Sometime around 1890-ish, it became a bicycle shop, and the railroad was built through. They pushed that building on logs down what would be the railroad, down next to the river. And it was a barber shop, and then it was a library, the last thing that I remember it being. 2008, when my son was born, the town of Pelzer, who owned the building, they were going to tear it down because they wanted to build a parking lot. I kind of said, well, I don't really want them to tear it down. I'm kind of tired of history being torn down. So I went down there and got on council's agenda, and I said, before you pay $1,000 to tear it down, I'll give you $1,000 and move it. And they were like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but if you want to give us money for a dilapidated building and move it, then you have at it. So my dad and I got together, and he didn't tell Mom, and I didn't tell my wife that we had just purchased the old library in Pelzer. 6 months later, we shut down Main Street with the permission of DOT and moved the Pelzer Library to Main Street in West Pelzer, located at 64 Main Street, and that is now where my parents live at. So it's a little bit of history in Pelzer that we kind of pulled to West Pelzer. Now, for about 6 months, I will be completely honest, nobody in Pelzer liked me when we moved that library because they wished they would have thought of the same thing. So when you ride by 64 Main Street in West, I live at 66 Main Street, but when you ride by 64 Main Street, you can look at that building and go, that was the old grocery store. And that was the old bicycle shop, and that was the original library in the area. And one of those folks there is probably John Franks. Let me tell you the story of West Pelzer.